Hi guys, Vitaly Gieman here again with Norman Wolf.
Hi,
And
Vitaly.
how you doing, Norman? We're gonna do some sailing today because last time Norman described this analogy that context is, well, actually, rather than me repeating it, Norman, can you repeat briefly this analogy of sailing in organization and how context in relation to context of the
Yeah, sure. The analogy we used last time was that of sailing. And the reason I use sailing is because, as you mentioned in the last conversation, that you, as a CEO, you don't really like this thing that's invisible, right? Because you can't do anything with it. And so to try to make the notion visible or understandable, I said, look, if you're sailing across the bay and you got a destination, picked out, and you're tacking back and forth, and you've got it lined up, and you know how to trim the sails for the wind and everything you can visibly experience, but you're completely unaware of this thing called current. And so you're tacking, and all of a sudden you keep getting off track. You keep getting pulled off downstream, or something's happening to you, and you keep missing your mark, right? Now, what if I told you, hey, the reason you're missing your mark is this thing underneath the water that you can't see, the current, right? Now, that's hard to understand because everybody knows current, but what if you didn't? Imagine what it would be like sailing if you had no notion that current was there. And then somebody came along and says, hey, you're fighting this thing called current. You go, oh my God. Well, context is the current of the energy field that's guiding you. As we talked last time, it literally does define behaviors. It's everything that causes us to do what we do.
Okay, I kind of get it, but now we're talking. Can you give me a practical example? Organization. Here is the current, and how you deal with it.
That's a great question. Absolutely. I was working with this client. I want to give you the context of the organization. It's an engineering firm, cybersecurity, sole source contractor for the secret agencies of our society, NSA, NRO, and people we can't talk about. And as a sole source supplier, their biggest contribution, what made them who they are and what made them unique, was their ability to come up with elegant technical solutions to the customer's problem. And that set a context for the organization, especially the engineering department, that who we are people who come up with the most sophisticated solutions to complex problems. And budget wasn't a big issue, right? Because they were sole source. The government couldn't go anywhere else. And so the government would naturally pay whatever the engineers needed. Okay, so that's the context.
Mm-hmm.
Now shift the environment. All of a sudden, they've grown. They're facing competition now. And the government is beginning to move away from sole source suppliers to competitive bids because, sole source suppliers obviously cost a lot more money. So now this company is swimming in a new ocean, a new river, yeah, with competition, and so they're losing proposals, one proposal after the other. They went through the traditional way of trying to improve the bidding process, the proposal writing process. They brought in experts in how to prepare government proposals to win and all of that, and they still kept losing. When I got in there and started to work with them and began to look at, okay, so at the activity field, they're doing all the right things. They've got good relationships with the customers and even internally, what's going on? And what I discovered was the context of the organization was, especially from the engineer's point of view, was we provide elegant solutions and cost is not a factor. And so no matter what business development did, no matter how they went through the proposal process, the engineers literally could not think of a compromised solution, or that's the way they viewed it, right? Anything that was less than elegant was a compromised solution, and we don't do that. That's not who we are. So we changed the context. How did we change the context? We began to change who they were from people who provided elegant solutions to people who provided the best technical solutions within constraints.
Mm-hmm.
That became a different innovation challenge for the engineers. It's not just providing the best, fanciest thing, but providing it within constraints.
And how did that change? How did that change the outcome?
Well, within, I think the first win we had was 3 months after we engaged that process, and they won 7 out of 11 bids in the first year. From going from 0 wins, it was 0 out of 5 bids before I got there. They went from 7 to 7 out of 11. 7 out of 11, I think it was, or 8 out of 11. Anyway, significant improvement. Because now all of a sudden the organization, the context of the engineering department specifically, was in alignment with the environment they were in.
Oh,
so,
okay. Yeah.
You see the difference?
Yeah.
They were no longer swimming against the current.
Right.
They were now using the current. They were in alignment with the current. They were flowing with it.
Right.
It had to do with mindset. It had to do with a sense of identity, the context, the meaning of who we are. And they couldn't change that other than the way we did it.
I understand. That's a great example. Yeah. In a way, we know about it. I mean, we know about alignment with with external environment. If you're pushing against it, then you're always pushing uphill. But we just don't see it as a kind of as a context for organization. And now we've put if at least we've named it so we can actually work with it, right?
Exactly right. And that's the whole purpose of having named it. It's there. And we eventually get there by beating our heads against the wall, trying to change the way we do things. And eventually we get there. You can get there a lot faster if you're conscious of it and work with it like we did in this organization.
Like it. So in a way, we're going from what I call is like unconscious competence to conscious competence.
Yeah, basically. And that's really the power of the living organization model from my perspective is we're making conscious that which is present anyway. So we can consciously work with it instead of having to bump up against it and work with it and change it, but we don't know why. That's one of the reasons most successful, the successful people who do, are successful with their strategic initiatives. We've talked about 30% are successful, 70% aren't. Mm-hmm. The 30% who are successful have a context aligned with the strategic initiative, but they're unconscious about it. The 70% who fail because they're fighting forces that they're not aware of or conscious of. And so by making them conscious of it, it will shift them to the 30% successful, or will change the dynamics. We'll have 70% success and 30% failures.
Beautiful. I like it. I want to be in the first 30%. Thank you. Thank you so much. That really explains deeper. Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Look forward to more conversations.
Absolutely.